Welcome everybody. Welcome to the first ever Dark Carnival. Welcome to the first ever panel at the Rue Morgue Dark Carnival. This is a momentous historic event and we are so happy to see you all. Thank you for joining us. My name is Andrea Subissati. I work for Rue Morgue. I'm also the co-host and producer of the Faculty of Horror podcast and the host of the Batcave on YouTube. And with me, we've got a panel on horror talk in new media. We've got Jay and John from Bloodbath and Beyond on YouTube.
Hello.
And my co-host Alex West. And my plan was actually to have them introduce themselves down the row, but I guess I've already fucked that up. So why don't we maybe begin with, I'm actually hoping, I'll moderate this panel-ish, but I'm hoping this will be kind of a roundtable discussion where we can chat with each other and chat with you and chat about the con and talk about the stuff that we're doing. So why don't we go down the table and we'll just maybe brief introduction, tell us who you are and a bit about your show. You want to start, John?
Yeah. So I'm John Lyle. I'm with Bloodbath and Beyond, and we're a horror review show on YouTube.
I'm Jay Bond. I'm the editor and co-host with John. We cover a lot of stuff from a lot of indie horror movie reviews. We do the stuff that a lot of people don't cover that deserve a lot more exposure, so we do that. And studio stuff, so you know, it's pretty broad. But it's all horror. It's all very niche stuff. And we're about to hit 20K today. 20,000 subscribers, guys, by the end of this panel.
You guys have all subscribed, right?
On YouTube, right?
And there's about 14.
Yes! Done! Achievement unlocked.
I'm Alex. I do the Faculty of Horror with Andrea, and I'm also a writer about town, and my first book just came out. Films of the New French Extremity, Visceral Horror and National Identity, out now, and yeah.
Buy her book.
Bye.
In closing, buy her book. Now, how many of you listen to horror podcasts? Okay, a lot of you. How many of you watch horror on YouTube? Okay, so I was really interested to ask that question to see about crossover because I've only started to branch into both worlds and I'm finding them to be pretty different worlds, quite frankly. So my first question is for you guys. What attracted you to YouTube as a medium for Bloodbath and Beyond?
We just kind of we always just like watched horror movies. And when we saw other people like Chris Stuckman, other big horror or non-horror reviewers just like reviewing movies, like nobody's really covering that as far as the horror genre is concerned, and specifically like micro-budget, indie-budget stuff under $50,000. Nobody's talking about them, other than like print magazines and stuff. So we're like, let's try it out. There's an untapped market. Let's talk.
Yeah, and it's actually kind of funny because when we first came up with this a few years ago, originally it was four of us, talking about doing a podcast. And then Jay had some camera equipment and we're like, well, why don't we just make videos and put it on YouTube instead of doing a podcast? And from there it became Jay, myself, and another one of our friends who's not here, Travis.
Oh yeah, where's Travis? You ever find his phone?
I have no idea.
Last
He
time I
went and
saw
bought
Travis,
another
he
one.
lost his phone, and that is the worst state you want to see another human being. I only ever feel empathy when somebody loses their phone. Thank you.
Especially when you're at a party and you're playing Jackbox TV when you need your phone in
That's
your
right.
hand.
Yeah, especially when the party's at my house, and the best party ever. So speaking of like untapped markets, obviously Alex, I know our origin story of starting the Faculty of Horror, but you were very much the podcast connoisseur and you knew that there was kind of a gap in the market that you were looking to fill with us.
Yeah, so we started the podcast back in late 2012, which I like to refer to as pre-serial times. So before podcasts kind of hit a really mainstream audience in a lot of ways. And I was just getting into podcasts. I had a couple friends who were doing them, and I thought they were really cool. They were a great way to just talk about films and talk about whatever you wanted in whatever way you wanted. And the one thing that was missing for me was more female voices. And before I ever even met Andrea, I heard her on what was once the Rue Morgue podcast, which unfortunately now no longer exists. And she was a guest on there talking about her book, and she talked about feminism in horror, and it was just like a million church bells going off in my head, and I felt so alone in the way I watched horror movies and the way I enjoyed them. And so to hear Andrea talk about it in that way was huge for me. And then we met and became friends, and then yeah, we decided to try this way, and it's kind of worked out. It's not too shabby.
So, do you guys think that I don't want to ask to what we attribute our success? You guys are obviously very successful. I think you are ostensibly the biggest horror review channel on YouTube right now. Do you think that's because you offered something that nobody else was offering?
A lot of the times what it comes down to is because of the exposure that we give to a lot of indie horrors, it's just something that isn't out there. So we're just trying to like showcase a community that already existed and make it noticeable to like everyone else. Because the way that indie horror works is a lot of the times through word of mouth. It's like, hey, I made this movie. Oh, I made this movie. Let's show each other's movies, and then it just grows from there. So it's just kind of like a tight family that you don't really know who you are until you actually meet them in person. So we're trying to just like bring those people out and help them get that exposure.
Yeah, there's a lot of times where we see just people at conventions just like this, and this is their first time they've ever bought a table. This is their first movie. It was $1,000, and they're just like, we need to get eyes on this. And we picked up some like this, like Pieces of Talent. I don't know if anybody else has seen that. Joe Stauffer, this movie is fantastic, and we just saw him at some random convention, and it ended up being our like top horror movie of 2014. A movie that was mind-blowingly good for the budget that it had, that many people would not know existed had we not done a review, or at least, I mean, he's going to be peddling it, but if we can help in any way, that's our goal, and it's amazing to do so. And it's great because it's just, with the internet, there's a lot of people out there creating content, and just like back in the day when you're going to your VHS store and you're looking through crates and crates of videos, you're trying to find that hidden gem, and now there's so many more movies to find those hidden gems. It's great. We can experience that and share those gems with the world. And we're not just in well, we are technically in my basement, but we're not just in a basement sharing them with our friends. It's, hey guys, we found something cool. Check it out. That's about it.
So the way you're talking about just like finding these gems and sharing them and sharing that knowledge, I find people often ask me how much money I make on YouTube and how much money I make in my podcast. And of course, the answer is a big fat zero for me anyway. I don't know, YouTube has a bit of a better monetization strategy.
We're balling over here.
They're obviously rolling in the deep. And but I think there is a very punk rock aesthetic to these new forms of media where you're doing it for the love of it, and if you're growing, it's because you're sticking with it and in it for the love of it.
Exactly.
You guys are all shaking your heads, so that's good enough for me.
We agree.
Thank you for the audio. Thank you, and we're periscoping as well, or I thought we were. Are you okay? Great.
Oh.
Thank you. Hey Periscope.
Hey Periscope.
That's what I was
Hey.
doing,
Hi.
being rude on my phone. So, let's talk about. Do you guys have a best moment of your YouTube career that you'd like to share? Do you have a career highlight?
Yeah, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, well, you'll agree with this one. This was the best moment. Last February, we actually got to go to LA and do something that was unexpected. We never would have imagined. We got invited to go to the Playboy Mansion for a red carpet premiere for the movie Muck. And we partied at the Playboy Mansion. I never would have thought that in a million years, that I would be at the grotto having a Ryan Ginger and Playboy bunnies are around me. Like,
There's a lot more baby oil than you'd imagine. It's like every single room you walk in, there's robes and baby oil.
Oh, well, I can imagine Hugh Hefner, so that makes total sense.
Yeah.
it's actually pretty cool because when you walk in, the first thing you see is like the old Frankenstein from like the Universal Monsters, and like that was like, oh, I wouldn't expect that here. That's pretty sweet. His like private movie room was like really cool, and yeah, I know like Playboy, not really horror to a certain extent for like a wow factor or something for our show, but it's an experience.
I've been writing for Rue Morgue for about 5 years, and I reviewed Muck for the magazine, and I think it's the single most scathing review I've ever written.
Oh, it's not a great movie. But it brought us to the Playboy Mansion because a bunch of playmates get murdered.
Not to crap on your career highlight, guys.
It's the second movie in a trilogy, so there's no beginning, there's no end. It's completely useless. It's just boobs and blood, and with zero story. Probably the opposite of what you guys talk about on your podcast.
Yeah. And like the selling point was like, hey, Kane Hodder's in this. Yeah, there he is for 5 minutes.
A spoiler. He's very, very small role. But hey, it was a selling feature, and it got us a cool opportunity.
And what's your career highlight this far, Alex?
Not getting invited to the Playboy. It's been I think Andrea would probably agree, especially with the Faculty of Horror. It's been the interaction with friends or fans who have become friends, who are just people who listen and they say, this matters to me. This, it makes my day when this pops up in my feed, or you made me think about something in a different way, or you helped me through this. And, we get a lot of, it's so nice to hear two women talking. Oh, it's also so nice to hear two women getting along. So there's, it's, like 99% of the time, that's pretty true. And so it's been, I don't ever need to make money on this because I feel rich intellectually from doing it. And in my kind of social justice warrior aesthetic, I feel really great about it.
Here we are talking about the Playboy.
I know, I think I just had a rage stroke when that happened. No, respect. No, that's amazing. Congratulations. I could never. I'd be like, so can we talk about all the rapes that were covered up here?
Ooh.
Seriously, look it up.
Moving along to my favorite moment. I think that was actually it now. But prior to that, when I asked the question, what I was going to say was, I think my favorite moment was when we were at the Rue Morgue Halloween party last year, and I was working the door, so I was fit to be tied. Not unlike how I am at the Rue Morgue booth this weekend, and Alex was able to just kind of pull me out for a quick smoke, and we're standing out there and we're like, oh, did you this and that, jabbering away, and somebody was like, you guys the Faculty of Horror? And that is nuts. Like, to be recognized from a photo or a Facebook or an article or something like that, but our voices and the way we were bantering with each other, I thought that was wild. That made me feel like a rock star. I loved it.
Yeah, that's crazy, especially being like a podcast.
Just audio.
And
just voices.
We're pretty, I think kind of both of us are pretty private in terms of our image. Like, obviously, if we Periscope or do something like that, that's fine. But one of the first pieces of advice was ever kind of given to me by a former colleague of ours was, I was like, hey, Andrea and I are starting this podcast, and this other female said, you guys should get some really sexy photos taken. And I was like, oh, and this was before we were like, we're gonna, do a feminist podcast, or, that was unintentional, that came naturally. And I just remember feeling sick to my stomach and telling Andrea and she was like, no, and I was like, well, obviously no. But, since then, and I get very protective of our image online. So that was really nice. Like, I was really cool, and he was super fun, and he was just like, loved the show, and we just chatted for a bit, and it was really nice.
Do you guys have any questions for us?
Okay.
Yeah, what's up?
Going on the opposite end of the spectrum from Muck, was there ever this is for everyone, was there ever a movie that was a little bit more, I guess, cerebral horror that you found in terms of hidden gems?
I guess what I'd say to that is that, I work for Rue Morgue, so I'm in kind of a microcosm of Canadian horror, and Canadian horror fans love the shit out of Pontypool, right? Pontypool fucking rules, and we all know it. And so we did a show on it, and we have so many listeners in the US and in Sweden, actually. We're huge in Sweden. It's weird. There's all these weird Swedish tweets that, thank goodness, they have a mechanism to translate it. But
I just think they're IKEA furniture.
We get a lot of mail saying thank you for delivering us to Pontypool. So that was kind of a more cerebral gem that I feel like we kind of shot down south and across the pond.
I think one that we touched on is actually being sold here by Black Fawn Distribution, which is Horsehead. It's a French film. It's super artistic, and it's a little above what we actually generally review. but it was mind-blowingly good. Like, we really, really enjoyed that one. It's super deep. There's a lot of, just a lot of different topics that are being covered just through the cinematography and the colors and everything. And I highly recommend that one.
Yeah, the symbolism in that film, if you like more art house style of films and horror, it definitely hit the mark on that. It's really, really well done. Like, it's a beautiful film, and just the meaning behind it, it's really worth a watch. And it is subtitled, so just a heads up on that one if you're not one who likes to read when you watch a movie, but you should definitely check it out.
For me, I'd probably say it's a film I'd heard about quite a bit last year is like the best non-horror horror film, and it's a film called Queen of Earth with Elizabeth Moss. I believe the director is Alex Ross Perry, I want to say. And it was incredible. I most nights take a sleeping pill to fall asleep, and I put this on because it was on Netflix, and I was just like, I'll take a sleeping pill, and if it's great, I'll finish it in the morning. I fought a sleeping pill for 90 minutes to finish this because it totally grabbed me. It is one of the most viscerally honest and frightening portrayals of female friendship I've ever seen, and the performances are incredible. It's very stark, and it's very well directed and well realized, and it's very clear in its kind of obscurity and what it doesn't want to give up.
I loved it. I checked it too. So, my next question, it's not really a question. I just kind of wanted to talk about how I started out writing on horror. I started out going to school and writing my thesis on horror movies, and I kind of morphed that into like blogging, and then I started writing for Rue Morgue. And Alex, I know you're also obviously a writer who you just completed a book. You've written for Rue Morgue and Diabolique and several other mediums. I want to talk a bit about how the podcast really differs from that in experience. Do you want to just... I know that's not really a question.
No, the podcast was, I think, very instrumental. Maybe you guys have found this as well. But instrumental in helping me define my voice and define my voice for a lot of other people. I think before the podcast, I was trying to write, and I was writing a bit, but I was just kind of writing ad hoc. I was writing all the time, and it just wasn't totally me. And then through doing the podcast, when we found our rhythm, when we found our voices together, and how this dynamic works, it became, let's try to be really smart, but let's also try to make it like incredibly accessible. Like if I can't explain a concept in a sentence or two, I probably shouldn't be talking about it. So, and then that transferred over into my writing, and in working on this book, which I'm calling it kind of accessibly academic. I talk about theories, I talk about sociology, I talk about history, but I just try to explain it, because when I read these academic books and texts, I can just feel so in over my head, and they don't even make sense. It's not even writing anymore. You're just quoting constantly. So I tried to kind of bring that into it, and I found that's what's been quite nice in the rest of my writing career is people have actually approached me because this is the way I am on the podcast, and it kind of transfers a bit into my writing. So yeah.
And do you guys do other forms of media in addition to YouTube?
Not currently.
No?
No, we're pretty much just strictly YouTube. Like we tried branching out in other things. Like when we first started the show, we would play a game called What Would You Do, which we would review the movie and then take scenes from the movie and put ourselves in them and just be like, hey, what would you do? And we had like a lot of fun doing that, but what we noticed was like only like our like real like hardcore fans were interested in it. So like we'd put a review out and it would get like a couple thousand like views in like the first week, and then we put a What Would You Do out and it'd only get like 100. So like no one was really watching it, and it was just getting to the point where we're putting all this time and effort, and it was just so much fun doing it. But there is that line they have to draw where like we have lives outside of this as well, and it's disappointing, but like we always have them, and we do want to bring them back someday. But we try different segments because like with any media, you need to grow, you need to branch out, because you want to cater to your audience, because like what people want to see and want to hear, you also want to bring that information to them.
Yeah, one of the things that we're looking at doing is we started like dabbling in commentaries, but drunken commentaries, kind of like a Mystery Science Theater, but like less informative, more drunk banter and riffs. So I know it's so weird that like You guys are so intellectual in comparison. It's like mind-blowing. Like I've listened to your
We're also
podcast.
shit-faced when we do
I
the
was
podcast.
just gonna say,
we
we
drink like all the time.
Excellent. And this is 100%
That's why we have like a
vodka.
lot of bloopers. A lot of burping.
If you follow me on Snapchat, you know I started drinking Crown Royal at 8 a.m. this morning.
Oh my god.
Oh. I just want to curl up in a fetal position for you.
Oh.
Feels great.
Okay.
I have a severe public speaking anxiety,
Obviously, right, guys?
and here I am.
You're doing great.
But yeah, doing like commentaries, and I think branching into podcasts is probably the next thing, which is so weird because we started there and decided video's the way to go, but then there's people that are driving to work that want to like listen to things, or people at work that just want to have something in the background. I mean, I'm a web designer, and all I have is podcasts on, like Killer POV is on in the background all day, and now Brainwaves, I guess.
Shockwave.
Shockwave. I think there's another. Oh, Dread Central's doing another thing.
Really?
Yeah. I think.
Yeah, it's interesting how there's slippage in that kind of media, because we started the podcast and I was like, oh, we should get the podcast on YouTube. So I put it up and we got dinged with copyright so fast. Because when it comes to podcasts, I don't give a shit about copyright. I will put a full-length song at the end of the episode because it is the Wild West, and Madonna, I guarantee, does not give a single shit. But in YouTube, it's kind of a different world. And I thought it was really interesting what you were saying, John, about how the fan response is kind of driving the direction that you guys are going a little bit. So to go back to the beginning, the inception of Bloodbath and Beyond, did you guys have a background in video?
Yeah.
I do. I went to school for film, and I'm actually a film teacher. So I do have a background in this. So yeah, I kind of know what I'm doing.
I dabble. I taught myself through Film Riot on YouTube, and Indie Mogul, and all those cool resources on the online, on the YouTubes that teach me, how to play with a camera. And through that, we started doing shorts. I mean, we kind of got away from that. I used to be a rapper back in the day, so it's like, I'm gonna throw down some money, buy a camera, and shoot some of my own music videos. In my room, I'm gonna be the biggest rapper ever. And that's the reason why I have 2 very successful rap videos. Check them out, MC Escher. They're nerdcore. Anyway, and that's kind of like you pick up a camera, you start playing with it, and you start looking up tutorials, and it's kind of the same way that we transitioned to into YouTube. It's like, oh, we already have this equipment, let's try and figure out how we can improve. And if you watch our old videos, they probably are going to look exactly like this, with a black little curtain, dimly lit, like poorly composited, assuming that I'm going to try and put our background in here. But anyway, it just, it's a growing thing, and you learn with experience. And we learned that podcasting wasn't probably the best, but video, we were okay. And as you grow, and even seeing your channel, like when you started and to where it is now, is amazing. You now have better lighting. Everything looks aesthetically pleasing. You got the Gary Pullins in the back.
He's
Love
here
those.
this weekend, guys. If you want to pick up some artwork that you see in the backing. And for yourself, Alex, you have a background in theater. Does that inform your radio talents at all?
Probably. I can speak with breath from my diaphragm.
But she can't roll her R's.
I can't roll my R's. If you listen to our last episode, you'll learn that. It taught me, because everyone, my background is in theater, did my undergrad in it, did my master's in it, and everyone just assumed, oh, you're an actress, and I was always like, fuck, no, God, no. And initially in my undergrad, I was doing a lot more kind of like playwriting and directing, but also like an undergrad or a minor in English Lit and a lot of film studies classes. And it mainly just taught me how to think, how to write in a certain way, and how to research, most importantly, because it's like, they were doing this kind of theater in Italy in the 18th century. Why? And then you examine all the places, how and why that happened, and that informs a lot of the way that I research for the podcast, the stuff I bring in. And which is really interesting because Andrea's background, for anyone who doesn't know, is in sociology. So there is a little bit of overlap in terms of interest in history and culture, pop culture especially. And we just kind of approach it from very different ways. And I think that gives the podcast a lot of texture and a lot of dynamic.
Great. Any more questions from the audience? There's one over there, Lydia. Hi.
It's for both sets. Is there ever an episode that was like a watershed moment where you found either you had to have a post-mortem meeting afterward because of listener or reviewer response, or you listened back and thought it was like amazingly good and you needed to keep doing things and change your production?
Oh, great question. You guys want to hit that?
I'm trying to.
I can kind of touch on it. Just recently, we did Shark Week, so we did a whole bunch of like shark movies and everything like that. And so we did 8 shark movies. We spent a whole week watching like
The worst of the worst.
The worst of the worst. And it was around like day 4 or 5. Like we're halfway done, and like we just get done filming. We just look at each other. We're just like, when is it gonna get good? Like,
Are there any good shark movies? So we had to like instinctively stop doing asylum stuff. Let's do the reef just to break things up.
yeah.
And then we need to close off with Deep Blue Sea because we need something else that's of quality. I mean, as much as we love indie stuff, there's only so much you can handle when you're doing 8 back-to-back that are all just absolute garbage.
And only so many with an LL Cool J rap song at the end.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
And possibly the one that ruined his career. Because I haven't heard another song after that, I think. I was phenomenal.
Let's
That's my
start.
favorite.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. I could talk about that song for hours.
I could talk about watching that video for hours.
I can also say, like,
listens to LL Cool J to listen to LL Cool J.
another just to move on from that, from the Shark Week, doing a Serbian film. We did a review of a Serbian film, and if you guys have seen it, I can hear it just like, dim the lights. After that, like, it was a very, very depressing episode. But it was something that, because, you know, it's real talk. Usually I'm drunk, we're just having a blast reviewing shitty shark movies. And then it's like, oh, this happens. Oh shit, like how do you be your playful self? How do you be a YouTuber? How do you become an entertainer while talking about such dark, dark topics? And it was so weird. It was such a strange environment in my basement talking. And then the reception was phenomenal. It was just like, everybody was like, nobody talks about these films the way that we talked about them. Because we did talk about some of the more deeper aspects that we usually don't dabble into because we're trying to have fun and we're trying to poke jokes. And so we actually had to sit down and think about like the times in Serbia and the little metaphors that they're playing with and stuff. And the reception was huge, so we started playing with like the more extreme stuff. And that's not necessarily my bag. We don't really enjoy that too much, but you know, we can kind of cruise in there, talk about them a little bit deeper, and it kind of switches up the pace, so that was pretty nice. A Serbian film.
Watershed.
Five out of 5.
5 out of 5 babies. I think for me, it was probably our 3rd episode, which we did on Jennifer's body, and that really felt like we took, the right turn into feminist land, and we both kind of did it, and it happened very naturally. And that's when we also kind of started getting called out a bit for it, and also some people really responding to it. And I think that's when we both kind of clocked. Obviously, we'd always both identified as feminists, and this was really important to us, but we never thought we were putting that much of it into the podcast, if that makes sense. So then we actually just started having that dialogue more and more about, like, what is this? When do we say this is what this is?
Yeah. And we still get called out all the time, and that's the nature of the beast, you know. Like, there is no one feminism, and we've tried to be really transparent about being white feminists, educated white, super privileged feminists. We can only speak about what we know, and these are limitations that we acknowledge, but it always makes for a great discussion. I was worried that you were going to pick the same episode as I did, and I think it's a bit of a different experience for me because I edit the episode. So we go into a room and we yap, and then we go out for nachos, and then we go home, and wasn't that fun? And then I've got my real work to do. It's like 50 times the amount we spend recording, I have to spend cutting it up and getting the clips to put in. So I kind of relive the episode for hours and hours the week afterward, and then Alex just kind of waits, and then when it goes up, she gets to hear it again. So I kind of really live in that world for a couple of days. And when we did the episode on menstruation, what was that, like 6? It was within the
6
first
or
10.
7, yeah.
So we talked about Carrie, and we talked about ginger snaps, and just how this monstrosity always seems to kind of coincide with womanhood. What's up with that? And we're talking about periods and period blood and tampons, and I'm like, man, this is not going to go well. Our male listeners are not going to be into this if they even download it, and I think it's one of our best.
Yeah.
So that was my watershed moment.
Interesting.
Thanks for the great question. Any other questions for right now? Hi.
How did you come up with Bloodbath and Beyond name?
Ooh.
We sat down and we talked about it for weeks. And this is before we found out, and it's unfortunate, that Simpsons actually had the joke in like one frame of one episode. And it hogs our SEO and it drives me crazy. But we actually were just like hashing out things. We were like, should we do the film cynics? Should we do like, I don't know, leaving it on the cutting room floor. There's a few different like ideas that we were playing with, and just, you know.
It just kind of happened, and
Well, it didn't just happen.
well,
we
yeah.
sat and we talked about it. We had a list of a bunch of things, and then it kind of just happened.
Yeah. You know, coming up with a name for a show is a lot harder than you would actually think. We've got a couple, like, we got a new segment that we're going to be starting on the show, and coming up with that name,
Yeah.
that took like a good couple months.
Yeah, even doing like, we have other channel ideas and stuff, and just coming up with because this is going to be the thing that you're going to be representing for the next however many years. And so we've been doing it for almost 3 years now, and we knew that we wanted to have something that's going to draw somebody in right away. We need like an immediate joke. If we can do that, then hey, we walk by with a shirt, you say, oh, that's hilarious. Now I can stop, give you a business card, and say, check out our show on YouTube.
It makes me laugh to see actually the stores. I'm just like, no.
So like we do a lot of stuff in the States, and when we get there, like we'll wear our shirts and like we'll be like sitting around, and everyone's like, "Oh, did you guys just get off of work or something?" And we're like, read the first part.
And like a month ago, we were in Hamilton. We were going to see Green. And then
Yeah,
we like there was a Bed Bath & Beyond, and I just looked at it. For some reason, I'm just like, they stole our logo. I'm like, oh wait, that was us. It was so strange. It was so strange to just kind of see that. And now these Ice Nine Kills guys, I don't know if you guys know the metal band, they got a Bloodbath & Beyond song. It's driving me crazy. Oh, they're hogging all the YouTube views, man.
Oh,
Because
so
they're
it's
already
getting your
popular.
search hits.
They're blowing it up.
Maybe you should like collab, or you can come in and rap and do a little like.
They stole our logo right from our website and
Whoa.
sold it on stickers.
Not cool.
I know.
Not cool if you're watching.
But they can make the same joke as us. Like, I don't really care. I mean, go make these shirts. No. I mean, I have the trademark. Sorry, I just pointed at my own camera.
Yeah.
And you.
And you.
And especially Chad Archibald.
What's the name of your new segment that you spend months on?
Okay.
Chad,
Now
you ready
this
for
is
this
gonna
one?
blow your mind, because you're gonna be like, you spent months on this?
Okay,
It's
so
terrible.
So we literally came up with this the other day when we were leaving YouTube Spaces, and I just go to Jay. I'm like, you know what it's gonna be? The haunting of the paranormally possessed.
The worst name ever. And essentially it's just a segment where John can review the shitty paranormal movies that I don't want to review on the show.
He hates paranormal movies. I love paranormal movies. So it's something that's not on our channel. So now we're making a solo segment that I'm just going to talk about all those lovely jump scare movies that everyone hates, but I kind of like.
Fair enough. So the question wasn't for us, but do you want to give the origin story of our show name?
I think I came up with it.
Alex totally came up with it. And
Mic drop.
Well, it was one of those things where we ballied around
Yeah.
with a couple of names, and Faculty of Horror sounded so stupid, but we just kept coming
Did?
back to it. I
didn't think so at all.
They always do. Like the Batcave did as well. Lady
think
Hellbat did as well. It sounds stupid until it gets going, and then you're like, oh yeah, that's what it is. But I do remember one of our options, one of our finalists was because she's Alex and I'm Andrea. We were thinking like we could something like A&A, and then we could make it like an AA meeting where it's like, hi, I'm Andrea and I'm a horrorholic. And Yeah, right? See, like, that's how
I like
Faculty of
that.
Horror sounded to me. But if we had a run with it, we would have made it cool, I'm sure.
I think we ran with it for like 30 seconds, and then we were like, this is deeply problematic. We should check ourselves before we wreck ourselves before
But
we even start.
you'd be top at, like, in the phone book.
Yes, indeed.
You know?
And
You'd be
that's
competing with
something.
A1 roofing.
So my next question is just if we could possibly comment on the changing nature of our respective industries. Like, I haven't been in YouTube that long, but even the time that I've been in there, there's been fights and rages and content ID. Like, people just post rants, and YouTube kind of listens a bit. Like, they bend here and there, but obviously YouTube has had to morph in terms of legal limitations since its inception, because people are getting ripped off, people are getting sued, full movies are getting posted, etc., etc. If you could speculate as to the future of YouTube and where your channel sits in it.
It's actually getting better, thankfully. YouTube is finally listened after 10 years. There is a huge copyright issue. I mean, there's so much content being delivered to YouTube that it's important to have some kind of automatic claim be put on videos that are showing, say, 5 seconds of a clip of a movie or 5 seconds of a song, because there's no way that a team of people could just review every single movie and every second of every YouTube video that's uploaded. It's impossible. So now it's an automatic thing. You can dispute this copyright, and that's great. We've fought 700. We've won We've won 700. So all of the shit that you hear online of people saying, "Oh, YouTube's copyright system's busted." It's like, not if you're using it right.
But wait.
I've never been sued. I've won 100% from Lionsgate to Paramount, Universal, using all of their clips. I have half of Crimson Peak in our review.
Yeah.
No issue, because we're doing it by the law.
I've beaten 2, and both times were, and I'm happy, but both times were like a severe emotional, intellectual, raging meltdown. Like, I get so upset and I get so offended that I have to fight for my content. Like, how dare you copyright this? Is it because I said the movie sucked? Because you taking my monetization doesn't make The Conjuring 2 any better, motherfuckers.
So here's what's now been introduced. So that's how it kind of was. And now recently YouTube has announced that they're putting, so what would happen is all of these fake companies, like John, if he wanted to create a fake company, could just go and claim her video and say, "Oh, that's my content, and I'm going to take all the money from you for the next 30 days. And she can dispute it, and that's fine, she could be in the right. But at 30 days, you need to make a decision. Do you want to proceed, or do you want to just retract that statement? It's like, you know what, I've taken your 30 days worth of money, I'm just going to walk out. And that's fine. She's all happy. He's got 30 days worth of revenue in his pocket, and that's that. YouTube, well, yeah, she's stressing out on Twitter about it. Fair enough. But now YouTube is actually putting everything in an escrow account, so these weird-ass companies can't just go and make these false claims and take your money from YouTube. But, I mean, I get it. I understand, because there's so many people. Like, if you search any movie on YouTube, you can pretty much find it for at least a couple days. And then, like, when that's taken down, the next day you'll see like a movie from the 80s being re-uploaded, and it's ridiculous. And I feel really bad for a lot of the indie people, and that's why sometimes we have to try and like hold our reviews, because sometimes we get early screeners, and it's like, it's not we're holding our reviews because we're afraid of like, you know, releasing our opinion too early. It's because if I say that Bite is too good, and I think we did that with Chad's movie, we said Bite was great, we released that review way too early. If it had been leaked, people would be downloading it way before the release, which is September.
Chad Archibald,
Ladies and gentlemen.
director of Bite. Just get a little wave out there.
Check it out.
And what about you, Alex? Like, since we've started, it's been 3 years, which is
3.5. It'll be 4 in December.
It's a good chunk of time, and I feel like the horror podcast landscape has changed a lot since we've started.
Yeah, I think the whole podcast landscape has changed. Again, I mentioned Serial before, but when Serial debuted in 2014, end of 2014, that became like a sensation. a huge sensation, and all of a sudden people who'd never given a shit that I had a podcast suddenly started asking questions about it, and like, what podcatcher do you use, and how do I get it, and oh, I just listen to it on my phone, can I also listen to it on my computer? It was mind-blowing to watch, and I think that helped kind of normalize it a lot more. So now that after kind of post-serial, we're seeing, you know, almost every horror entertainment outlet has like podcasts we're listening to, podcasts we like, best podcasts about food, you know, it could be anything. And, you know, it even kind of went as far for me personally that earlier this year, I was invited back to my old high school to talk to a class about how to do podcasts. So, because that was becoming part of their independent study unit, which was amazing. It was an option for them to do a podcast. And they were really interested in them. They asked great questions, and a couple of them actually made podcasts about their families or movies or books they liked, and it was really amazing. And I think we're seeing a lot more of that. There are so many terrific podcasts by people who are not given the room in society to speak or to talk. And here it's like, you can put it out there. Nothing may ever happen with it, but it could be huge, and it could really affect some change, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's true. It's really great to just be able to kind of put whatever you want out there. There's, like, when we started, like I said, there's not a lot of people in the space. Now there's tons, and we don't always have to agree, but you become like a tight-knit community, and you kind of like, we're friends with all of the people that were fans of us and are fans of us. And many of them have gone on to start their own YouTube shows. And it's great. I absolutely love it. John, as a teacher...
I actually, because it's funny you mentioned that, Alex, I just started teaching my students how to run their own YouTube channel. Just to be like, you know what guys, this is the way things are going. So I want to give you the most that you can possibly get from this. And just go out there and do that. Because like when we were in high school, this wasn't a thing.
I wish it was a thing.
If this was a thing when I was in high school, I think after studying like film, I would have just went right into YouTube instead of like trying to work for like TV and like doing my own thing working on sets. Like I would have just had my equipment and got it going. And now I'm giving like 18-year-olds like an opportunity to be like, here's my equipment, go make something, do what you want to do. You have like 5 months in a semester to just go and make whatever your heart desires, put it out there, trial and error, and they're at such a young age that they have that chance to like see what works and see what doesn't work. And it's the same with like you go in there with the podcast. It's just something for them.
It's an evolution of things like the zine culture, which, you know, was really kind of big underground movement in the 90s, and it's still present today. And you know, now we just have this incredible platform that is the World Wide Web. You can put something out there. Again, nothing may happen with it. Only your mom will listen to it. But it could become something bigger. And that's, I think, is such an appeal. And that can be, you know, through whatever platform you choose. And that's what's nice is because, you know, you guys, like, you're comfortable with video. You can be on camera and do YouTube. I'm less comfortable on camera, so I feel really great doing a podcast where I can just sit and do it with my best friends, and we can just hang out and do it. And it's, you know, you have to remember that it's pretty powerful to have a voice, and not everyone feels like they have a voice all the time. So these mediums are becoming increasingly important, and I think politically important for a lot of different reasons. And we're lucky that we get to do, you know, fun horror stuff, but it's also, you know, there's a huge business behind it, and there are, you know, different themes we talk about within it that really affect people.
So maybe one more audience question, if there is one. There's one. Hi.
What was your thesis, like the subject matter, and does it continue to inform your work now in the faculty board?
Mine was about horror movies that purported to be real. So anything from like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre to the Blair Witch Project to that terrible movie called The Fourth Kind. Anyone remembers that? There are a couple others in there too, but I was studying a lot of a theorist called Walter Benjamin, who is obsessed with the idea of the real and what is real. Is this moment here real right now? Like, it was weird shit. But I wound up kind of writing my thesis on that, and that's actually the moment when I was kind of like, I was studying theater, and my advisor was just like, I also love horror movies, so I'm totally comfortable with you writing about this. And that's when I discovered so much of the horror community because of the research I was doing. And I kind of got it a bit out of my bedroom that I was always watching these movies in by myself and into this community a little bit more.
I wrote my master's thesis on zombie movies and zombie cinema, and so this was about 10 years ago, and zombies were so hot. They were annoyingly hot. They were everywhere.
They're
and
so
so
sexy.
They were so sexy. And so, yeah, I was actually already sick to death of them, but I was like, okay, this is something important. Something is happening here that is making everybody revisit the old zombie movies, make new zombie movies, reinvent the zombie, make them fast, and then The Walking Dead and all that, like, it's leaking into video games and TV, and it was everywhere. And because I was doing my thesis in sociology, I had to provide chapters and chapters of theory before I could even get to the film, and that's where I discovered, like, active audience theory, and just the more theoretical underpinnings that entirely inform the way I look at cinema now. So that really, sometimes I'm like, my MA in sociology was a real fucking waste of money. But then again, maybe not. Okay, so we kind of have to wrap up. I have one more question for the audience, and then one more question for us. And my question for the audience is, is there anyone in here who is thinking about, interested in, and maybe just did start a podcast or YouTube channel? Okay.
I'm seeing 2 housing hands.
Yeah, I'm seeing housing hands, which is really interesting to me because it's scary. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I think we thought about it and we talked about it a lot before we dove in, and that's a big moment, and it's not easy. And you put it out there into the black hole of the internet, and you wait for reviews, and you wait for trolls, and it's fucking terrifying. So my question for the panel is, what advice would you give to yourself when you're just starting out? Knowing what you know now, knowing the trajectory of your career, maybe not knowing if it would go so well or not, what didn't you know that you wish you did?
Just to do it?
Yeah. Honestly, the only thing that we can suggest is just do it. Go out there. If you have like the worst quality possible, it doesn't matter because you have content. And as time, you'll find where your mistakes are, you'll find what you're doing right, and you'll just grow with it. And you'll get feedback from people on the internet, you'll get feedback everywhere from your friends, family, and you just use that and you grow. But like if you don't have anything, then you'll never know. So just do it.
Yeah, we debated about doing the show for a long time, and then, we're just like, let's just record it, let's have fun, let's watch the movies, let's do what we want to do, put it out there, figure it out. We did record like a bunch of episodes beforehand, but I mean, it's definitely important to just not worry about gear. If you guys are thinking about, I don't have the best camera, it's like, my phone shoots 4K now. Like, that's better than, well, it's the same as my camera, but, I mean,
your camera's the 5th panelist.
Yeah, I know. Well, they're watching. Say hi. Just pick up your phone and shoot a video and figure it out. Like, you don't need the best audio right out the gate. Just, as you kind of watch your stuff back, as you learn to edit, and you just kind of go with the flow and see what the audience reaction is, then you can adjust. And it's great, and it's fun, because nobody is stopping you from saying what you want to say or doing what you want to do. I mean, when it comes to copyright, yes, but as far as like doing whatever you want to do, just try it out, see how it works, and even if the copyright guys come at you, then you learn to adjust.
Well, yeah, actually, if I could just jump in, it bears mentioning that when copyright dings you, they could try to make you take it down, but 9 times out of 10, they just want your money. So if you're not in it for the money and you don't care about monetizing, fucking steal that shit. What are they gonna do?
Don't. Fifth panelist.
It's on the record, of course.
I'd say know what your concept is, know what you want to do, know how you want to do it, and that can always evolve. And then in-depth Google search helps. I spent a lot of time looking for other female-hosted podcasts with an academic bent, because if that existed, I would have been like, cool, I'll just listen to this. I don't need to start anything. So really do your research, understand what you guys want to do and how you want to do it. Give yourself room, as these guys were saying, to evolve and change. And if you decide to have a co-host or partner in crime or co-hosts, choose them wisely. Choose them wisely. Andrea and I often get confused for each other, just online or in different spaces. And one of the greatest compliments of my life is to be confused with Andrea Subissati. So, yeah, choose wisely. Choose the people you want to be around.
Thanks, Alex. So for me, I'd like to echo what you said about don't be intimidated by quality. I've seen so many. You want to start a podcast? Well, don't you dare unless you have the top of the line, blah, blah, blah. That's all.
You need a red camera, and then you can proceed.
Yeah, exactly.
Bullshit.
People won't listen if there's pops and this and this and that. Yes, they will. Quality, content is king. Content is king. And I also saw so many tip sheets that said, don't bother unless you can commit to doing it weekly or bi-weekly because your listeners will get bored and go elsewhere. Like, holy shit, really? No. We do it once a month because that's when we can do it. And if our listeners have bated breath, cool, man. It makes them hungry because, again, content is king. And yeah, so on that note, we have to wrap up. Thank you all so much for coming out for this very first convention panel at the Dark Carnival. Faculty of Horror, we have pins. Did you bring some pins? I only have a few, but if you'd like one, come visit us at the Rue Morgue booth. If you'd like to chat with us, come there. Feel free to walk across all the cameras. Thanks. And thank you so much, Bloodbath and Beyond, for coming out. Check out their channel, subscribe to us. Have all the fun.
Get them to 20K. Let's do it.
Woo!
You guys are a great audience.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. You guys are
I'm
great.
terrified.
Come on.